Howdy, guys. Yeah, I said howdy. We do have an A&M guest. Few howdies on the channel so far. And let me introduce you to our guest tonight. We have Drew TAMU, as he is known on Twitter, very popular, covering the Aggies on YouTube. Drew, welcome, and how you doing, friend?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me, Ghost. I see you killing it as well. I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate you saying howdy and having some of us howdies on the channel. It's fun to get to kind of chop it up with the enemy, if you will, but it's a good time. I really enjoy it. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, brother. Something that's been long overdue. We've both worked pretty hard to find a way to make it happen. You know, we've both been interested in this for the last month or maybe more. So glad you guys, for every one of the viewers, please, or hop in the chat. That's my point. Get in the chat. Let's have some fun. First and foremost, thank you for the compliment. I definitely appreciate that. It's fun having you Aggies on here and getting your side of things and kind of seeing where your mindset is at. And I'm not going to sit and pretend like what Texas does and what A&M doesn't directly affect one another, mostly in the recruiting world, obviously. But, it's important to have you guys on and to share, for my opinion, for you guys to share your thoughts and opinions on your program with some of our guys. And then, obviously, it's good for me connecting with you Aggies. So thanks again, Drew. Where I want to start, obviously, a big game this weekend with Florida coming up. I want to backtrack a little bit. We didn't get to talk preseason much about maybe your expectations. Notre Dame was a tough opener. Yeah, I'm not here to, poke you or prod on that game at all, but not even referencing that game. What were your preseason expectations for the Aggies?
Yeah, so I was saying 9-3, and of course, I look at everything through maroon-colored lenses. I mean, I'm going to look at everything in a little bit better light than it actually is, and I acknowledge that in everything that I do. But man, I thought we had enough talent given the schedule. It's a fairly manageable SEC schedule. You avoid a lot of juggernauts, right? You don't have the road Georgia. You don't have, the LSU of old. They're kind of in a rebuild, if you will, after what they lost last year. You avoid some of those huge pitfalls, and I thought the schedule was manageable given the amount of talent you had. Now, the thing is, it's a year one coach, and that's always, kind of a mystery box, if you will, of a season, kind of like a wrapped present, and you're finally waiting to open it and see exactly what you're going to get. It can go one of two ways. You could always, overperform and kind of catch people off guard. You're harder to scout. You have less tendencies with that iteration of your team. So I thought there were 8 to 10 wins on the schedule, 10 being the very positive outlook, 8 being more realistic. So I went with 9. And I always thought that the early part of the year was going to kind of be the thing that set our kind of where we would hit on the season, because you're coming out of the gates with the new staff, new ideologies, new playbooks, so much new, so much to learn. And it's that was proven to be true in the first game. And I had that game as a win, and I had Florida as a loss going into the year. That's how I projected it. And that's a hard thing to do, right? To go out and say, okay, we're going to win and lose this game, that game. I do it for the sake of making fun content for the channel, right? I do a game-by-game prediction. And yeah, I said we split those 2 games. And I had that how it was going to be, as Notre Dame win, Florida loss, not be able to get over the hurdles. So we're kind of, or the road hurdles that we've been, struggling with the last 10 games. You've probably heard the number, 10 road losses in a row. So we're kind of on track record-wise, 1-1, but with 1 loss early in the year. But obviously going into this Florida game, that this is kind of going to set the outcome of the year, in my opinion, because I think this team can improve and has the pieces to be a better team than we saw versus Notre Dame, the second half of the year. I really believe in Elko. I love his staff he built. Obviously, Tommy Moffitt's at the top of the list when you look at guys that are going to kind of move the needle for the team. Yeah. But, man, I mean, I think you could probably tell from afar that this is a pretty big game for both programs. I mean, the same can be said for Florida. Really, I don't know if it's a fork in the road, but I think both teams are at an individual fork in the road, not necessarily both teams. I think each individual team is at a fork in the road right now, given kind of how we're feeling in the year.
No, I definitely agree with that sentiment that this is a massive game. for A&M to reach. I for what it's worth, I also had you guys at 9-3. That's 9-2 going into the Texas game. So I had you guys playing some good football. Yep. I might have been placing a little too high of expectations on Mike Elko in year one, especially with the Notre Dame game first, because now, it does create a lot of pressure here. Florida, obviously, they're trying to figure out who's going to be the starting quarterback going forward. They're trying to figure out if they have the right coach. A&M knows who they want to have as their coach. You chose Mike Elko. Everybody has a lot of confidence on Mike Elko. He's going to put out great defense. And then with the, some of the changeover you had on the offensive line, a little bit of inexperience. I mean, you have in my opinion, you have great skill position players. The Reuben Owens injury hurt a lot. And so, yeah, all of a sudden, man, I'm fully agreeing with you. This game has turned into a big one. And I know from an Aggie standpoint, probably coming into the season, most of you guys probably didn't have y'all dropping this game to Florida. Did you just kind of, looking back at your preseason thoughts, did you just something about this week, something about this particular Florida team? What kind of had you thinking that it could be an L? And like you said, it's very difficult to predict game by game.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate you going out on a limb and doing so.
Yeah. It's a tough exercise because it's easy just to go out and say, oh, yeah, I feel like it's a 9-3 team and we'll let the chips fall where they might. But to go out there and pick every one, I mean, that's honestly an exercise in futility because you don't know what the trends of the team are going to be. You don't know when they're going to be clicking. You don't know if they're going to be better earlier, later in the year. All that stuff goes into it.
Injuries, a ton of variables. Injuries. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Things compound on each other. And yeah, so, well, actually, Ghost, if you were, I'm obsessed with Aggie football. I'm deep into Aggie Twitter. I'm deep in the message boards and all that stuff. And actually, Florida was a kind of a highly contested talking point going into the year amongst Aggies because a lot of us looked at Florida as a very manageable opponent and a team that obviously isn't in their heyday, a team that's kind of unstable right now given the coaching situation. A lot of people aren't really high on Graham Mertz. We'll get into that in a minute. I'm actually higher on him than most. And Florida is not the Florida of old, but as I mentioned, it's been almost 3 full calendar years since A&M has won a road game. And that was the first road test of the year. And, it's a new coaching staff. There are new philosophies for approaching a road game. Obviously, given that the team is traveling on Friday now, I think that's an indicator that there's a different approach. Because I don't know if you know this, Jimbo would take the team to the away destination on Thursday. They would kind of have a longer layover. And as someone I've played that can be a problem if you let college kids just kind of sit and wait too long. But all that to say, it's a different staff. However, these players haven't learned how to win on the road yet. So this game was always kind of a toss-up in my mind, as are all the away games on the schedule. Auburn, South Carolina, and Mississippi State, not so much. But those other two are. And maybe A&M is clearly, to me, better than them on paper. Maybe South Carolina is a little bit better than I thought. But just that hurdle, it's a team that hasn't learned how to win on the road. And SEC environments are the real deal. The Swamp's going to be rocking. I'm sorry I cut you off a second ago. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, you're great, man. I don't even remember. I thought you made great points all the way through there. Going on the road in the SEC is, going on the road in college football is not easy. And you're talking about the Premier Conference and doing it, I personally love Shane Beamer. I've always been a huge fan. I've always secretly rooted for South Carolina and him to work it out.
It's a good fit.
But, I'll be honest, I was sleeping big time coming into the season. It's one game. They looked really good against Kentucky. Yeah. Kentucky also looked really bad. But, yeah, I completely agree with you. Going on the road, South Carolina, Auburn game kind of late in the year, so maybe gives that inexperienced O-line and a quarterback who has to figure some things out in a hurry time to do so. So I completely understand, you're taking a realistic view to this. Playing on the road's tough. And so Florida, me looking at them, and obviously everybody looking at them from a national perspective, assume that they, are pretty much DOA just because of the schedule. And all of a sudden right here, if they turn around, beat A&M, get to 2-1, I don't know what that does for Napier's future, but what are your thoughts on Coach Napier, the Florida Gators? Do you think we're at a point of no return for Billy? Do you think there's something for maybe DJ as a saving grace? Do you have any opinions on that whole situation?
I do, and I'm sorry if there are any Gators watching, man. I hate to dog on teams, but look, I think everyone sees it. I what I called the Florida season in the offseason when I was doing my offseason shows and this is pretty disrespectful is how I look at it. It's kind of a formality. I don't think Napier's making it through the year. I think the ship has largely sailed. He beats A&M this weekend. Let's say that happens. I mean, have y'all seen their November schedule? I mean, there are so many tough games on this schedule. Look, if they would have beaten Miami, it would have been a different story. They would have had a chance to make a bowl game. And I think maybe they beat A&M. They still have an outside chance. But, man, it's so hard what they're going through right now because I don't know if they have the troops right now. They have good players, but I don't know if they have the guys kind of in their kind of peaking right now and playing well right now enough to kind of drag them up into kind of that more, upper echelon, mid-tier SEC world. And I just think they're just doomed for the season. That is how I feel about it. Having said that, they can beat anybody on any given weekend. They have that much talent. But I just think the schedule is so brutal for them, given where they're at. And man, I personally think Billy Napier is going to make it through more of the season than most because what are they going to do? They're going to fire him and then get the next guy in, and the next guy is going to go through that really brutal schedule. And then what happens with him? How's his perception the perception of him once they get through that stretch of games? So really weird situation for Florida. I don't envy where they're at all, and I feel for them. I love seeing a good Florida. I love the swamp. I love the brand. I love the Florida Gators. I'm all about the chomp. I won't do it right here, but I like the chomp. But, it's an unfortunate situation to kind of have a coach that's on his last limb, and it looks bleak given the schedule. But like I said, they could beat anybody. They could line up and beat A&M this weekend. Team is weird. Obviously, the quarterback situation. When you get into the quarterback situation already, I mean, yeah, it's strange. It just got announced right before we went live. The Graham Mertz confirmed starter for the game, and that's what I expected. I think a lot of people expected that, and I think a lot of people still expect DJ Lagway to play. And I actually think Billy Napier has handled the situation pretty well because obviously Graham Mertz played the first game. It did not work out well. I don't think I would put all the blame on Graham Mertz because he was pressured like none other that game. His receivers didn't really get open, but they didn't have a lot of time to get open because he was under constant pressure that game. It was a mess, and he got knocked out early fourth quarter with a concussion. Lagway goes in, leads the team on a touchdown drive. So, oh my goodness, we got a controversy right out the gates. Game one, here's the controversy. Yeah. It's starting early. And then, of course, he can't play the next game given concussion protocol. He's cleared now, obviously. And then Lagway just has a great game versus Samford, as you would expect. And, I mean, he was able to showcase his raw talent, which he obviously has given his high school tape, given what he did in high school. He's that level of player, but he was really, really, really good versus Samford. The ball placement was amazing. The accuracy was amazing. He was pretty poised, but here's the thing. Samford barely blitzed in that game, and of course they weren't getting pressure with Ford because Samford versus Florida, and he was able to tee off and really just showcase what he had. So fans are seeing this, and now there's this huge outcry. I was listening to, I think it's like, what do they call it? The SEC crew that goes on the road with Tim Tebow, Paul Feinbaum, and other
something of that nature, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to that, and that crowd is all like, Lagway, like play Lagway. So really tough situation from like a fan perspective. But honestly, I think Mertz presents a path to victory because if you look at what has happened against A&M in the first two games of the year, if you didn't know this, A&M's, I think, only recorded one sack on the year. And I think that's actually a debated topic because the quarterback almost got back to the line of scrimmage versus Notre Dame.
Nick Scorton, right?
Yeah, exactly. He tackled Riley Leonard, and Riley dove for the line of scrimmage, and it was like right there. So maybe a sack on the year. We'll call it maybe a sack. I don't even know what to call it. And
you got to have the field scorekeeper give you the home advantage on that one, chalking one up.
Of course. And through my lens, I'm calling that a sack all day, baby. I mean, that's clearly a sack to me. But the thing is, though A&M has not recorded a sack, both quarterbacks, I'm going to include the McNeese quarterback in this discussion because that's part of the sample size of the season. Both quarterbacks had an extremely, extremely fast time to throw. The average time to throw for a college quarterback is 2.4 seconds. And both quarterbacks were throwing sub 2 seconds on non-pressure plays. That's extremely fast. Almost a half second faster than typical quarterback the average would throw. And to me, that's the D-line kind of dictating the game. The D-line is kind of dictating a game plan, even if they're not getting sacks or even pressures, and that's like straight up pressures. they're still speeding the game plan up for opposing teams. Now, what I think Graham Mertz can do is just play ball with that type of game plan if Florida wanted to do that. I think they have some talented receivers, and Graham Mertz can get them the ball quickly and efficiently. He knows that playbook well. He's an accurate passer. He takes care of the ball. So I actually think there's a path for victory with Graham Mertz. And, of course, they're going to throw Lagway in there. He needs experience. He has just all the tools. So we're going to see both. I've really never had a preference. I thought both could beat us, and I thought for Florida, it was going to be about the protection and the compliments they got for the given quarterback. How do you feel about the two? I mean, it's kind of weird. They're not too stylistically different. I just think it's experience versus raw talent.
I'm probably a little higher on Graham Mertz than most, to be honest.
Yeah,
I've been a fan of obviously he's moved around a little bit. I think he, like you said, there's a path to victory with Mertz. I just think there's going to be a ton of pressure, like you're saying, fans and maybe even some media noise that if something goes wrong, I mean, there are going to be outcries for DJ Lagway. It's going to be so loud, and I feel bad for Mertz in that regard. At the same time, I think that with the defense that you guys run, and big credit, you're kicking the quarterback, get rid of the ball half second earlier, essentially. That could be a multiple things, but at the end of the day, the D-line is always playing a part in that. And whether it's a coach that is scheming quick throws and quick game, maybe a little RPO action, they're doing that out of respect for that defensive line because maybe they know they can't hold up in protection. And so
absolutely,
whether it's they're directly getting a pass rush or just causing schematic changes, I mean, it's important. And so that's what, your defensive line is going to do all year. You have a very, very strong defensive line. I'm a huge fan of it. And that, obviously I think people agree that's the strongest position group on that team. And I'm very curious to see how the Florida offensive line holds up against them, because if they don't, I'm not sure it matters who's back there. DJ now, I saw a couple stats. DJ completed 9 passes of over 20 yards last weekend. And so part of me thinks and wonders if Mertz does struggle a little bit. At what point does DJ come in? Because I think that as soon as he does, they're going to start trying to take the top off a little bit. I think it could be not completely different game plans, but as far as the way the passing game is coordinated for these two, I could see completely different games. A little more ball protection, a little more quick game stuff with Mertz, a little more home run type stuff if DJ comes in. But I mean, once again, DJ is a fantastic talent. I don't blame Florida fans for wanting to see him, but me personally,
right.
I'm higher on Mertz than most. And now, in regard to the whole coaching situation, they're not going to fire him. They're not going to fire him at midfield or anything silly like that. It could be a situation very similar to you guys and Kevin Sumlin, where by mid-September we knew he was done. Everybody knew he was done, and then there's all these back channels, working with Jimbo, obviously. But you back channel, you find your guy. You don't have to hire him and let him get his butt kicked through that brutal schedule. Florida plays Georgia on November 2nd. Texas on November 9th. That's tough. But so, they were not going to fire the guy, in my opinion. That's not what I would do. I would hold on to him. He's a competitive cat. Things have not worked out for him, yes. But I let him ride it out, and then you find your way through the back channels. You find your coach, who you want. You make sure, because, I mean, you're talking about multiple months of searching and trying to find the correct fit. Not as easy as, I'm making it out to be, considering the other coaches that you may want are going to be heavily invested in their programs and getting things done for their teams, trying to reach team goals, etc. And so it is a sticky situation as far as Napier goes, in my opinion. But I mean, like, it feels like he's toast, right? It's just,
it's unfortunate, man. That's an uncomfortable situation, right? I mean, they're probably the fans are going to deal with a lot of discomfort, I think, if things go south on the season, and there's a good chance they do. But yeah, man, I mean, you can't just hang the new guy out to dry. Plus, your pool of candidates is significantly smaller mid-season, considering the ones you want that are like, obvious upgrades are all, like you said, going to be, totally entrenched in their current team. So yeah, it could be very uncomfortable for Florida fans down the stretch. And you bring up a good point about kind of stretching the field with Lagway out there. I just tweeted this earlier. This is such an intriguing freaking game. I think mostly for the two fan bases, from a national perspective too, but mostly for each individual fan base, because, if they throw Lagway out there and he's trying to stretch the field, well, in a way that does play into A&M's favor, because that allows that D line to kind of pin their ears back more more drop back passes. They love to do a bunch of play action, longer developing plays, and that can play in A&M's favor. But also, having said that, I think A&M's DB room, which is a pretty new look DB room that is now one starter and one key backup short after the recent injury report, which we'll talk about in a second. I'm sure that was crazy. They're going to test those DBs in a new way because those DBs have not had to cover for very long, given that quick pass time that we were just talking about. Right. So it'll test A&M in an area that haven't been tested yet. I personally am very high on the DB room, and I would even say that the safety room might be the strongest individual position on the team. Maybe I feel that good about it. Whereas maybe the D line as a whole is probably the strongest position group, like you were saying. But if you're individually looking at a single position, I think safety might actually be that. But our corners need to be tested. And yeah, they're going to try to stretch the field. That'll test those guys. But like I said, it also works the other way. So it's just super intriguing. We're going to learn so much. I also said, I feel like I have everything to learn about this team in this game. I'm going to learn so much because, yes, we saw some stuff versus Notre Dame, but that's a really good defense, and that's a week one under a new staff. I mean, obviously, Connor Wigman wasn't himself that game, and I just feel like there's so much to learn about the team in this game.
Absolutely, and speaking of Connor Wigman, obviously, a lot of talk about him right now. I've seen multiple things. I was going to wait and talk to you about it because I feel like you'd be on top of it. Talk to me about this quarterback situation. Are we going to see Connor this weekend? Are we going to see Marcel? And regardless, if you don't mind answering my buddy Gary's question here at the end of all of it.
Yeah. Oh, man. I don't know if we're going to see Connor, man. I was actually live in the middle of a show last night, and I'm reading I have like an introductory monologue for all my live shows, and I get through it, and I start reading off the chat, and I get like 10 messages down, and it's like, Connor questionable? Chappelle's out? Connor's not playing? What's with these injuries, man? I'm like, oh my goodness. Am I going to have to go to Twitter? We're changing the show up. So changed the show up last night. We just went like on a Twitter deep dive for a while, started looking at injury reports, and yeah, man. So as you know, I'm sure there's now mandated injury reports that have to drop. I thought on Wednesdays going into each game. I'm learning more about this as we go because apparently you drop a second one on Thursday, which I didn't know that was going to happen. So we got a second one on Thursday. And sure enough, we had 3 more players on the list, and one of them was Connor freaking Wigman. And yeah, man, of course, everyone's scrambling. I mean, we got him back finally at long last. We had him last year. Could have been a different year. We've been missing him. Yeah. And of course, he comes back. It's a rough game one. Looks fine versus McNeese, but it's McNeese. I'm hoping for this progression, like kind of getting back into form, learning Colin Klein's offense. And he's questionable now. And based on reports, it's a true questionable. I don't want to get too deep into the reports because it's behind a paywall, but it's a true questionable. And I don't want to divulge the info that I don't have to present here. But yeah, true questionable. He could play or he could not. And yeah, man, I really don't know what to do. Well, like what to think because it's up in the air right now and it's so sudden, so out of nowhere. I will say we like our backup, Marcel Reed. I don't know if he's ready to go to the swamp and just kind of take over in a quick change scenario that this would be. I mean, based on the reports, it sounds like they kind of knew this might have to be the case potentially. And he's gotten some looks with the ones. And, last week I thought Connor played a surprisingly short game versus McNeese, even though it was McNeese. And, they got Marcel in for over 2 quarters. So I think he can win a game. I think he can win a couple games. But I've been saying this. I think Connor is kind of the ceiling to the year. And let's address that question that Stroud Boy and Executive Goob. We have an Executive Goob in here, one of the higher ups in our ranks. He's an executive, man. Okay, Drew, would love your thoughts on why everyone seems to be assuming Jalen Henderson to be out of the mix if Connor doesn't start. I think Elko kind of said it best last couple shows ago, one of his Rudy's Wednesday shows. Aggies are familiar. Where he does like a 45-minute interview on Wednesdays. He said that the coaches see thousands of reps in practice and they make decisions based off of that rather than the limited glimpse we get in games.
Well said.
Yeah, I think that Reed probably is just looking better and trending better right now. Not to mention he has a lot more eligibility than Henderson. And I like Henderson. I actually said, okay, maybe since Colin Klein likes to use a running quarterback that if there were sets or like formations or certain scenarios where you wanted to use a running quarterback and throw someone else out there, I thought that would be Henderson because he's thicker, he's more mature. He can take a beating, he can run between the tackles a little bit better than Reed. And I thought in that scenario, you would use Henderson. But in a scenario like this, I thought Reed was the option because he kind of presents the future, and he has the eligibility and the time. So all that stuff is there for Reed, and he has great arm talent, really athletic. He's just a little skinny and raw. So played really good in the bowl game. Maybe had our best quarterback performance of the year last year in the bowl game. But on the road at the Swamp, that's a different ball game, man. It makes me nervous for sure, and it definitely, I don't know if it significantly changes my outlook for the game, but it definitely affects it. How would you feel if you saw, our backup Reed? I don't know how much you know about Reed, but how would you feel about seeing him start at the Swamp?
Being honest, man, and being really, really familiar with Coach Klein and kind of his philosophy, which he's ever changing. And kudos to you guys for making that hire. I think in the long run, that'll be proved to be an excellent hire for Texas A&M and Coach Elko. But with Connor, I talked about it with a couple of Aggies preseason. I was kind of curious how that offense looked because he is a little bit, I'm not going to say dependent, but he likes to run his quarterbacks on design run sets. And with Marcel Reed, I think that gives him a new kind of level unlocked to his offense. And hey, if, like you're saying, thousands of practice reps, that's what coaches are making these decisions on. There are the circumstances at times where particular guys just turn it up when the bright lights come on, and you have an actual opponent over there with a different decal on his helmet. And I thought, Henderson did look good. So knowing that, this is just me, if I were an Aggie and what I would want to see, I would want to see him implement the run game with Marcel. And you obviously try to have the kid be smart about what he's doing. But at the same time, I play to win the football game, and I think that Jalen Henderson, they're not the exact same type prospect, obviously, but another guy that can use his legs some. I'm just curious to see what happens. I think that Klein can do something out of it if you can get some, some improved O-line play from the Notre Dame game. Obviously, McNeese, you handled your own there and kept Connor pretty clean from what I saw. I honestly only watched a half. But I don't have an issue with Marcel going to the Swamp. I think that with Klein, obviously, I don't know what the injury was, but when you're telling me that he got 2+ quarters, obviously it was something in that first half. And I'm thinking that from that moment on, Klein knowing the in that second half of the McNeese is like, hey, this is going to be my guy for K-State. And I think that's what a good coach would do and would try to get comfortable with him in that moment. And so could be wrong. Maybe he goes and he struggles against an experienced Florida defense. They have some upperclassmen there. Mm-hmm. They've struggled for years, but they have some guys that have been around the Swamp. So I don't know. Yeah. I get why you would have a lot of concern. I really do. It's a tough venue. It's one of the more elite places to play in all college football. But at the same time, man, I'm a huge fan of Coach Klein. I really, really am. And then when I think about him implementing the quarterback runs to what he was done the first 2 weeks with you guys, it would help the offensive line out a little bit. Takes a little pressure off the running backs. Involve a little, some quick games, some screen games. I've seen Klein do a lot of everything, So yeah. Now at the same time, with Marcel, you're probably going to have to find a way to have some type of downfield threat. I don't know if he's aching to, taking those shots, but you don't want to play in a box. You know what I mean? You can't just live and die off, hitches, curls, drags, slants. You're going to have to make safeties back up at some point, play a little bit of too high if you're going to get away with adding Marcel into the run game. And in my opinion, tomorrow, I'm pretty torn on that game. I have Aggies winning by a point. I think it's going to come down to who runs the football better. I mean, that's coach speak, very easy to say, but I think it's going to be huge. Now, I have a question for you. If A&M wins the football game tomorrow, what do they do well? What's the big thing that jumps out to you?
So, couple things. I think they run the football well, first of all, like you just said. I think they don't let either quarterback get comfortable. That's extremely important.
Yeah.
And I think they stop the run really well because as great as we feel this defense can be, the one area of concern, the one thing we're highlighting, I actually did a video about concerns, but the biggest concern is giving up these explosives in the running game. We saw it versus Notre Dame a couple times, mostly by way of kind of, misgaps by linebackers, bad angles once they get to that second level, that kind of stuff. I think the D-line's creating enough havoc up front. There's definitely another level there that we'd like to see as far as just impacting the run game.
Yeah.
I think it's been good enough. It's mostly been linebacker angles, and that's coming from players like Torrey and York, who we've seen it from at a really high level for, as large a sample size as you'll get in college football, 12 games, right? Like that's a good sample size for college football, given that these guys maybe play, maybe some play 30 in their college career. So we've seen that from them. And we need that to kind of get cleaned up because it was bad versus Notre Dame and a couple bad moments versus McNeese. But with the defense, the mainstays on that defense, I know a lot of people have talked about how, we gave up runs versus McNeese. We gave up 180 yards versus McNeese running. The mainstays in the game, like the ones and the key twos, they played like 15 snaps each, 20 snaps each. So I don't look at that as the sample size.
You know why that is, because you have a big game with Florida. I mean, that's
exactly.
So yeah, you have to throw that out completely. But go ahead. Sorry to get in there.
No. It's a great point. You got to keep guys healthy, and unfortunately, we had some injuries during the week. Tyreek Chappelle was our nickel, and he's been a guy. The sign to me of a good DB is the one you don't really think about, right? It's the one that's not really involved because he's doing his job, and that's exactly what Tyreek Chappelle, the senior, been here for a long time, played a lot of games here. That's what he's been doing the whole year, and he's out. He's officially out of the game. So is our backup safety, Trey Jones, transfer in, just a big body, really good in run support. He's been good so far. So that stuff is kind of working against us because obviously that nickel position is going to play a role in the running game, especially for Elko's defense. So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, you're right. They rested him for Florida. I don't take that too seriously. They did exactly what they were supposed to do when they were in versus McNeese. I thought it was a perfect game versus McNeese as long as the main players were out there. And we'll talk more about Reed in a second, but I scored on every drive in the first possession, got a stop at every drive in the first possession, including forcing 2 turnovers. But the cool thing that they did with Reed that game is, because you were just getting at this a second ago, is they left him out there with the ones for several drives. They left the receivers out there. They left the starting O-line out there for the most part. They had a couple rotational guys rotate in, but those guys could rotate in a real game. But they let him play with the ones, and I think they scored on his first drive with the ones, and it kind of stalled once they started putting some backups in. So I am excited to see that. But overall, just reiterating the keys, stop the run the ball, get after their freaking quarterback. Don't let them get comfortable, because that's exactly what Miami did well against Florida, and they had nothing going in the passing game.
Yeah, man, that snowballed on Florida so fast in that opening game with Miami. I was kind of expecting a competitive one.
Yeah, me too.
Man, they really did fall flat on their face, and then it just kind of seems like the whole Lagway getting to start game 2, it kind of re-energizes people. So I'm really curious to see what happens if y'all go out there, you give Mertz fits. But yeah, running the football, man. Run the football well, stop the run. You go on the road, you gotta have to run the ball at times, especially when you're talking about playing a young, somewhat inexperienced quarterback. Now, let me ask you this. Is there one big thing that you were worried about that could lead to a path of defeat in this game? So essentially asking you, if y'all do go down, what's the first thing that you would say if you're with future casts? What's the reasoning that you would give it? Or so sorry for that wording.
No, you're so right. I mean that's accurate. I think it's kind of hand in hand. It's if you don't stop the run, you give up explosives, because they have guys that can make you pay. They have some badass athletes on offense. They're just not getting them the ball right now very well and in space. Right. That was the problem in that Miami game, is they couldn't get Eugene Wilson, and I'll blank on names here, but they're starting running backs really good. They have a few good receivers. They have good weapons, and they just couldn't get them the ball in space because they couldn't protect the quarterback. Plays were getting blown up. Nothing was running smoothly. And we got to make sure we do the same damn thing. We can't let them get comfortable. We can't let that offense be comfortable. The defense has to be disruptive and just play their game, play to their potential right there. And with Reed, I meant to make this point a second ago because you brought it up. You can't just be having the short passes, the curls. And actually, I think this is my personal analysis. It'll be proven correct or incorrect this weekend. But I think Reed is most comfortable throwing the deep ball. In the McNeese game, I thought he was less comfortable with stuff that was kind of 10 yards and kind of less accurate throwing on the run, surprisingly, given his skill set. But we saw versus Oklahoma State, and we know based on his scouting report, he's got a hammer for an arm, and he's pretty dang accurate on those deep balls. But yeah, on the road, if he's indeed the guy, because it still could be Connor after saying all this. It still could be. And my calculations towards the game, my score prediction is 31-24 A&M. But my calculations towards the game did not include Connor just popping off and 300 yards. I wasn't considering that. I wasn't considering that he would be there yet. He's obviously a work in progress, but I need Reed to be comfortable, man. As long as he's not playing mistake football putting his head down, shaking his head. I think there's points to be had for this offense. I really want to see this offense get close to 30 points. And if it's your score, 21-20, honestly, I want to get the hell out of Dodge with a win. I'll take it. But if I want to feel good, I want to see the team get to 30-ish points. That's what I want. I mean, it's kind of greedy without Connor, but I think they're capable, man. And this O-line, honestly, has impressed me. I know it's McNeese, and I know it was a loss. They protected Connor just fine versus Notre Dame. I think Connor played more rushed than he needed to play. I mean, he's battle scarred, man. He's had 2 years of bad offensive line play, and that offensive line resulted in him breaking his foot or whatever the injury was specifically. I don't know exactly what it was, but a broken something. And that O-line played. It was a bad blitz pickup. It was a good blitz, a late arriving blitz, but he didn't get it. So I think that the O-line and the defensive line are two areas of the team that I feel can carry the team in this matchup versus two areas of Florida who have kind of been lackluster. I think A&M can win these trenches. And if they don't, if they can't stop the run, I think we could be screwed.
I mean, yeah, you're going to have to stop the run. I mean, you can't make it easy on Graham Mertz or DJ Lagway and play action to get it to some of those skilled, like you said, Florida's fine at the skill position. It's just getting those guys the ball in space and letting them operate. And so you have to stop the run, because if you don't stop the run, you're in deep trouble. That's kind of like going back last week with our Michigan game. I was like, if the only way we get in trouble here is if we somehow get gashed in the run game, and that opens up the whole play action and other shots. But you
just had to bring up the Michigan game, didn't you?
Well,
you're still riding that high, aren't you?
I'm not. I'm high, but not. Well,
yeah,
I'm not. I'm riding that high, but not as high as a lot. But yeah, absolutely.
I thought it was a good game. If you want to talk about, I kind of want to talk to you about it, because I thought y'all did kind of played a perfect game. I think y'all kind of played within yourselves. You're able to play to your strengths and dictate the game. And you kind of just let Michigan fall apart in front of you, and you just kept going. You weren't going to stop scoring. You weren't going to stop moving the ball. And y'all just played sound. You weren't giving up explosives. And then in that second quarter, they had 2 huge turnovers, and you capitalized on both of them, got 10 points, and y'all weren't going to get outpaced. Y'all were going to keep the pace going. And yeah, y'all did a good job versus a good defense. So I want to say I'm glad we can talk about each teams knowing we're going to play each other at the end of the year. That feels pretty good compared to years past.
Absolutely, man. It does. And, no matter how kind of, I don't know how you feel talking to me, but I'm sure, you would be a touch more perky if y'all were 2-0. And at the end of the day, and if we would have lost to Michigan, y'all would have beat Notre Dame. I probably would have been just a little bit more energetic. If we were 2-0. And it's very nice to know that no matter what happens throughout this season, whether we somehow lose our next, 8 or 9 games, or y'all do the same, whatever happens, there's a shot for bragging rights at the end of the season, the way that it should be. And so, great point. Yeah, I will say that definitely very impressed with Texas. And I'm trying to say this not as much as, yes, on the field play, but just the way that Sark handled this game. Quinn handled this game. For my keys going into that, I said that we would have had to turn the ball over 3+ times to lose, that we would have had to kind of got stymied inside of the red zone, and that we give up 200+ rushing yards, because Michigan is not who they were. Not yet. Right. Give them a couple of years. They have 5 new offensive linemen. You lost Blake Corum, who has been a monster in the Big Ten and on national football, or on the national scene. I loved Blake Corum. Roman Wilson, stud. Huge game in the Rose Bowl versus Bama. And then you talk about those 2 NFL linebackers. I mean, yeah, they'll have defensive talent. They do. But for Texas, it was just, hey, if we control this game, if we do not turn the football over, if we trust our traditionally very good stuff, we're gonna find points. The opportunities will present themselves. Now, I honestly didn't expect an onslaught in the second quarter, but Michigan helped. They turned the football over. Colston Loveland just absolutely dropped the football for no reason. Yeah. I'm still curious about that. A little cold up there, but so that's what came. And then in the second half, we didn't force any issues. We're not trying to win style points with recruits or anything. We do what we needed to do to get the hell out of Ann Arbor with an impressive win and not let them into the game whatsoever. Your point on explosives, when Michigan turned to a flea flicker in the first quarter, it was like, all right, we're feeling pretty good here.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We didn't take deep shots in this game. I don't think we had to reveal a lot of some of the playbook that we'll have saved up for, come Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Georgia. Hopefully we don't have to show a ton versus Mississippi State either. But I'm not going to disrespect an SEC opponent except Arkansas. But you
those
guys, I would say you guys handle them all the time, so I know you don't mind that one. But no, I'm glad that rivalry is back as well. But yeah, we can get off the Texas game. I am happy. I am impressed, but at the same time, I'm realistic about college football, and I understand there's a lot of work to be done. Things can change very quickly. I don't know what God knocking on wood every day for injuries for all college athletes. You don't want to see anybody put in all this work, all this time, just absolutely bust their ass. And then some of the preseason injuries, man, they made me sick to my stomach. Ruben Owens, Seti Baxter, Christian Clark, and that's just talking about our teams. There's plenty more. Oklahoma had some, Jaden Gibson, and so you never want to see it, man. But we don't know what these teams look like on November 30th, so that's why I know how it goes. I'll talk some trash leading up to the the week of that game, because I mean, why would we not?
Of course.
What a great way to spend Thanksgiving week.
Love it.
At the same time, man, I'm cool with our team. I am very confident. I had an 11-1 season, just so in case you do, or any of your viewers that you brought over, thank you guys that have all come over from Drew's following and checking out this channel. But I'm confident. I'll say that. At the same time, man, a lot of work to be done.
I had y'all 10-2 for what it's worth, and I actually had y'all dropping the Michigan game, and that was part of my preseason. I did a game by game for Texas as well.
Yeah.
And I had y'all dropping Michigan and A&M. I'm not going to, that's how I'm going to call the game. We're winning that game. No matter what happens, I'm going to call that. That's what I have to do. Yeah. But after I saw the teams in week one, Michigan's O-line struggles, just how you took care of business versus, I know it's Colorado State, but you just play your game. You look good. Yeah. Y'all, it's hard to win on the road in those kind of environments. It's hard to play your brand of football from start to finish in that kind of an environment. And y'all did that. I thought that was impressive. And now that OU's kind of looking real shaky offensively, that Georgia game is really the big one. It always was, but that one I'm kind of just looking at. And I know OU's a rivalry, Arkansas is a rivalry. So who knows? But
you never
I'm looking
know.
At that Georgia game. Yeah, absolutely.
I try to be really confident about the Oklahoma game. But man, their defense they're playing really dang good, and they turned Quinn over 3 times last year, and that was the game. Every Texas fan in the world feels like we should have won that game by 20 plus last year. We lose the game by 4, that we turn the ball over in 3+ times, in we don't get any turnovers. Hard to win a football game that way. So I can't rule it out yet. Venables knows what he's doing on defense, but I don't know. It feels a little personal. We've been really, really good at avenging losses from the year before, save Washington. But we'll see about the OU game. Drew, got about 10 more minutes for you, Bubba. Got a question for you. I like to do this with every guest on it, and I would love to hear your answer. What started your Aggie fandom? How'd you end up here, buddy?
Yeah, it was going to A&M. So I think most of my viewers know this. I played a year of football in college at Houston Christian, Houston Baptist at the time, and just 1 year, and then I ended up transferring to A&M, not for football, obviously, just for school, and that just kind of set me on the path. That first year I was there was 2016. I'm a younger Aggie, or a newer Aggie, I guess, if you will. I went to a bunch of games. I went to the UCLA game at home. That was I don't know if you remember the Josh Rosen 50,000. Yep. I was chanting that with the 12th man. I saw that huge Tennessee game where Alvin Kamara almost backdoored us after we were up like 2 scores with 5 minutes to go. That was a crazy game to be at. Went to overtime. That's when Butch Jones had the team of destiny with Tennessee early that year.
You'll appreciate this. I was living in College Station at that time. You might have heard me tell this story. I've told it a couple times. I lived off Barron Road, right beside College Station High School.
Nice.
And I could hear Kyle Field. I swear to you, I could hear Kyle Field from the back porch when y'all won in double overtime, right? I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. It was definitely overtime. I can't remember if it was double, but yeah.
I could hear a roar, dude. It was pretty, I mean, it was very faint, but I was like, wow, that is pretty cool. I mean, you got to give credit where it's due.
That's crazy.
Probably 107,000 Aggies in there going crazy. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things about College Station. It's kind of a plateau. It's super flat, but you can kind of feel Kyle Field's presence when you drive into the area. You like see it in the distance. If you're coming from Houston, come from like San Antonio, Austin, that direction, you can see Kyle Field before you see anything. And that thing kind of echoes throughout the entire city. It's really, really cool. But those are my first 2 experiences. I think I visited the year before and I saw like Western Carolina or something like that. But those were my first 2.
How was that game, actually?
The Western Carolina one?
Yeah, man. I probably back in when I lived in town. I mean, my wife's an Aggie. We'd be at a game or two a year. Have a lot of Aggie buddies. You know, Clemson, Bama. I saw y'all play Bama 3 different times. Saw the Clemson game.
Yeah.
Auburn one time. But I mean, it's college football, and I love college football. And that's the point of my channel is I'm going to talk a lot about Texas. Going to talk a lot about everybody else. And so I really appreciate, you know, a big time Aggie. I didn't realize you were over at Houston Baptist for a little bit. My brother coached over there for a year. This would have been post your time there, but
okay.
Very cool, man. I always love to hear stories on fandoms and how they develop. Sidebar real quick, for anyone that cares about my NFL fandom, I did my absolute best to explain and describe thought process on the show earlier today. That's posted under the lives on the YouTube channel. Man, that was a mess. I will be honest. You a Texans fan over there, buddy?
I'm neither, dude. I have the same problem. So I feel like I'm socially illiterate at times because I just can't talk NFL very well. I can talk about, I'm getting more into it now because I've gotten more into fantasy and I really care about my boys. You know what I mean? Like that's my family. I love my fantasy team. But aside from that, I can't, I'm not very articulate in NFL football. Like I don't even know who's in the divisions, like NFC Southern, like West. I don't know that stuff. Like I don't know anything about NFL. Like I know some key players and I think I know the game decently and I can watch a game and know what I'm looking at, but I enjoy it, but I don't jump into it because I spend so much time watching all of college football. I'm a diehard Aggie, but I love the game. And you know, I kind of owe it to my family to not spend Sundays like glued to the TV, I guess, because I could be if I let myself. So I kind of let Sundays be, you know, more free. I just kind of keep an eye on the old fantasy team, maybe watch some highlights, catch a game.
Exactly. That's how I've been. It's like I go through enough emotional toll on Saturday. Like, why do you need to do this on Sunday again? And plus, you start thinking about your family, and it's like, dang, you know, it's tough.
Yeah.
So,
you know who I feel bad for though? You know who really has it tough, Ghost, is the Aggie Cowboy fans. That combination. I don't know how those guys sleep at night. That's got to be so tough because of all the recent years. And, you know, it's been tough to be an Aggie most of my time being an Aggie fan in regards to like losing big games or, you know, coming up a little bit short of where you would hope. I mean, our 2 best years, you were like, you know, so close, but you didn't get it. And then Cowboys are the Cowboys. I don't know. Those guys, they got to be, I don't know, that's tough. That's tough if you're an Aggie Cowboy. I don't envy you, but I know you're getting some entertainment value at least out of it.
That's a great point. Real quick, tell the guys that maybe are new to you. What's your YouTube channel's name? Tell me one. I know this. I'm just blanking.
Yeah, I call it Drew TAMU. That's my name
thing.
with TAMU.
Okay.
Yeah, Drew TAMU. Same as the name you're seeing on the screen. And yeah, man, I talk a lot of Aggie football. Like I'm weirdly obsessed with college football, as I'm sure you are too. And I just needed a place to kind of, you know, let my consciousness kind of stream out because if I'm not talking it to a camera, I'm going to be thinking about it on my drive to and from work all day. So might as well have an outlet.
Well, I'm sure that you'll appreciate the night my Ghost Twitter account was created and activated. Night we lost to Kansas, and I was like, I got to find a way to start talking about this stuff, man. This is not healthy to hold it all inside. I need to post some crime ghost gifts or something. I'm going to figure it out. But Drew, it means a lot that you're here, brother. Guys, if you're watching on Twitter, we got 460 people now. Please go into my go hit my profile, follow the link in the bio to the YouTube channel. Throw us a subscription, throw us a like, please. Drew did great work on this one. Would love to have you back, Drew. Sorry, my laptop's about to die. Some love. We're gonna have a Texas and UTSA pregame show in 10 minutes. So more action coming for you. But all Aggies in the chat, Nash, Joey, all you Longhorns, I see you in here too. I appreciate y'all showing support and love all the time. Sign us off, Drew.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for watching. Ghost does a great job, man. I love how he's willing to talk to anybody, willing to talk about any team, any topic. And you know what? I'm going to keep giving him a hard time until he watches Star Wars, man. Why haven't you watched Star Wars? What is wrong with you, sir?
Man, I don't have enough time to get into.
I got you.
I have to. We could have that talk, but I have a lot of people disappointed in me for that same very thing.
That's a conversation for another day. Yeah, we got to talk about that in the future. But guys, thanks so much for watching. Definitely subscribe to Ghost. He does a good job.
Appreciate it very much, Drew. Guys, y'all have a blessed night and a blessed weekend.